Level 1. The obsession begins. You don't become a hacker the day you break into something. You become one the day you realize systems are imperfect. It starts small. You're young, sitting in front of a slow school computer. The internet feels like a clean, polished place. Websites load instantly. Buttons work when clicked. Pages look finished. Most people accept that as normal. You don't. You open Inspect element out of boredom. You change a number on the page. The text shifts. You change a color value. The background alters. Nothing meaningful happened. But something fundamental shifted in your brain. Websites aren't magic. They're instructions. And instructions can be rewritten. That realization doesn't feel criminal. It feels intellectual. You go home and fall into a rabbit hole. What is HTML? What is a server? Where is a website actually stored? How does a login form know you're real? Each answer creates more questions. You start noticing how much of the internet runs on trust. Forms trust input. Servers trust configuration. Users trust encryption. Trust becomes your new curiosity, not breaking things, testing trust. And once you understand how trust works, you start wondering how it fails. Level 2, the architecture of control. Curiosity becomes discipline. You install Linux because forums tell you real security research starts here. The first week is frustrating. Nothing works the way you expect. Commands replace icons. But command lines teach structure. You learn how packets move through networks, what an IP address really represents, how routers decide where traffic goes. You don't just use Wi-Fi anymore, you visualize it. Your mind maps connections like highways. Soon, you're running network scans inside your own home. You see open ports on your router. They aren't dramatic, but they respond. Machines answering machines. You discover that everything connected to the internet is constantly speaking, announcing services, requesting data, negotiating encryption. It feels less like browsing and more like surveillance. You're not looking at websites anymore, you're looking at infrastructure. And infrastructure always has weak points. Level 3, the first exploit. At first, you stay legal. Bug bounty platforms, practice labs, capture the flag challenges. You spend nights breaking intentionally vulnerable systems built for training. SQL injection, cross-site scripting, privilege escalation. You fail constantly. Then one exploit works. You inject a simple payload and the database responds differently than intended. You feel the rush, not because you stole something, but because you understood something. Systems don't break randomly. They break where humans made assumptions. You report vulnerabilities responsibly. You get your first payout. 750. It feels validating. But the more you learn, the more you see something uncomfortable. The practice labs are sanitized. Real systems are sloppier. Real companies leave real doors open. And not all of them offer bounties. One night, you stumble across a misconfigured cloud storage bucket belonging to a regional company. No password, just open. You don't brute force anything. You don't exploit anything. You simply access what was left exposed. Internal documents, employee data, client spreadsheets. Your pulse increases. No alarms, no blocks, no warnings, just access. You download nothing. You leave. But now you know something irreversible. The world runs on digital systems, and many of them are barely guarded. You didn't force entry. The door was open. That realization is more powerful than any exploit. Because now the line isn't technical, it's ethical. And ethical lines blur faster than firewalls. Level 4, the hidden internet. Curiosity eventually takes you beyond Google. You've heard about it before. The dark web. Most people imagine it as chaos and criminals. You approach it differently. You set up isolation environments, virtual machines layered inside each other, separate operating systems that never touch your personal files. You test leaks, you test DNS requests, you test whether traffic can be traced, you don't rush in. You study how anonymity actually works. Tor routing, encrypted relays, traffic bouncing across countries before reaching a destination. You learn that anonymity isn't invisibility, it's delay. The first time you access a hidden forum, it doesn't look cinematic, it looks primitive. Text-heavy boards, handles instead of names, threads discussing exploits, vulnerabilities, ransomware kits, phishing frameworks. No dramatic music, just quiet exchange of capability. You don't post, you read, and you notice something unsettling. The people here aren't cartoon villains, they're structured, focused, technical. Some speak in professional language about monetizing access. Some sell initial footholds into corporate networks like real estate brokers. Access to manufacturing firm, US, 200 endpoints. Healthcare provider foothold, admin privileges. You realize hacking has an economy, not random chaos, supply and demand, and skill determines your position in that hierarchy. Level 5, the dual identity. Your real life continues, classes, work, family dinners, conversations about normal things. Meanwhile, your digital life becomes sharper. You separate machines physically. One laptop never leaves your desk. Another is used only for research. Your phone is stripped of unnecessary apps. Metadata awareness becomes instinct. You stop talking about your interests openly, because the deeper you go, the more silence feels necessary. You test new skills carefully, password spraying against intentionally vulnerable targets, testing misconfigured authentication flows, learning about Active Directory exploitation, not theoretical, practical. You begin thinking in attack paths. If this service exposes credentials, escalate privilege. Pivot laterally, exfiltrate. Your brain starts mapping systems the way a burglar studies a building blueprint. You still tell yourself you're learning, but the line between study and execution is thinning. Level 6, the first real breach. It doesn't start with ambition, it starts with opportunity. You identify a medium-sized logistics company running outdated VPN software. Public-facing, known vulnerability, patch overdue. You don't scan aggressively, you move deliberately. One exploit attempt, the connection opens. Internal network access. This isn't a test lab, this is a live corporate environment. Employee names, internal chat logs, file shares. You feel the rush, but also something heavier. You're not just proving capability, you're inside something that affects payroll, deliveries, operations. You move cautiously. Privilege escalation, you gain domain-level access. That's when it hits you. You could lock this company out of its own systems right now. You could deploy ransomware. You could sell access. Or you could leave. You don't deploy anything. Instead, you document everything. Screenshots. Proof. Then you disconnect. Hours later, you return to the forum. Someone posts, looking for access to logistics firms in North America. You hesitate longer than before. Then you respond. Minimal proof. No details that identify you, just enough to show you have what they want. Payment arrives in cryptocurrency, more than you've ever earned in a month legally. Your hands shake slightly, not from fear, from crossing the point of no return. You didn't vandalize, you didn't encrypt, but you facilitated. That realization is heavier than the money. Level 7, the first trace. Success breeds confidence. Confidence breeds risk. Weeks later, you revisit a different target. This time, something feels different. Connection latency fluctuates. Unexpected network activity appears while you're inside. You check logs. There are signs of monitoring. Security tools scanning internal behavior. You exit immediately. Wipe volatile data. Shut down virtual machines. For the first time, adrenaline shifts from excitement to fear. You begin researching how investigations unfold. Digital forensics, how IP logs are subpoenaed, how cryptocurrency transactions are traced through exchanges. You realize something uncomfortable. You are not invisible. You are just currently unnoticed. That distinction changes your behavior instantly. You tighten everything. Stricter OPSEC. Fewer engagements, smaller moves. You begin thinking like someone who expects pursuit, even if no one is actively chasing you yet. Level 8, the moral drift. Money accumulates quietly, nothing extravagant. You don't suddenly change lifestyle. That would be obvious. But you feel the difference internally. You're no longer just curious, you're capable. And capability alters self-perception. You start rationalizing. These companies should patch. If I didn't exploit it, someone else would. I'm not deploying ransomware myself. Each statement reduces friction inside your conscience. But late at night, when you're not behind a screen, you think about something else. What if a hospital system were breached? What if patient data was locked? What if payroll failures cost people their jobs? You tell yourself you avoid critical infrastructure. You tell yourself you're selective, but you understand the truth. You're playing in an ecosystem where consequences ripple beyond you, and you don't fully control where they land. You are no longer a curious kid. You're no longer just a student of systems. You are part of the underground economy now. And underground economies don't stay small. They escalate. Level 9, the burn notice. It doesn't start with a raid. It starts with silence. One of the forums you frequent disappears overnight. Domain unreachable. Onion link dead. No announcement, no explanation. You search quietly through secondary channels. Then you see it. Arrests. An access broker picked up in Eastern Europe. Another in Asia. Servers seized. Wallets traced through exchange withdrawals. You read the details carefully. Operational mistakes. Login patterns tied to personal IP once. Crypto converted through a regulated exchange. Carelessness. You feel something you haven't felt before. Vulnerability. Not the vulnerability of systems. Your own. You review everything. Every transaction, every session, every potential trace. You replay past actions in your head like someone auditing their own life. Were you sloppy once? Did you ever log in without proper routing? Did you ever reuse infrastructure accidentally? Paranoia grows quietly. You stop engaging in new operations entirely. You wipe machines methodically. Secure deletion. Drive destruction. Encryption keys destroyed. It feels dramatic, but it's not fear of prison that hits hardest. It's the realization that your digital identity, and the one you built carefully over years, could collapse instantly. You built reputation under a handle. Reputation equals access. Access equals income. One mistake equals erasure. You understand now. Hacking at scale isn't about skill. It's about endurance under constant threat, and threat never leaves. Level 10, the exit or the ghost. There are two kinds of hackers at this stage, the ones who escalate and the ones who disappear. Escalation means ransomware crews, coordinated attacks, political operations, state-backed contracts. The money becomes enormous. The risk becomes exponential. Disappearance means silence. You choose silence, not because you've become moral overnight, not because fear consumed you, but because you understand sustainability. You start shifting your skills quietly. Security consulting under a clean identity. Penetration testing. Legal this time. You know how attackers think because you are one. You know how they pivot. You know where defenders are lazy. Companies pay well for that perspective. Not as much as underground deals, but enough. More importantly, stable. For months, you live in both worlds mentally. Old habits die slowly. You still scan networks instinctively when bored. You still notice misconfigurations immediately, but you don't step through the door anymore. Eventually, your old handle goes inactive permanently. No dramatic farewell post, no announcement, just silence. In underground forums, inactivity equals assumption. Some assume you were arrested. Some assume you joined a private crew. Some assume you died. The truth is quieter. You walked away before escalation chose for you. Years later, when major ransomware attacks make headlines, you read about them with a strange detachment. You understand how they got in. You understand the chain of privilege escalation without reading technical details. You understand the people behind it. They aren't monsters. They're curious minds that drifted too far without an exit plan. Somewhere tonight, a teenager is opening Inspect Element on a website for the first time. They feel that same spark you once felt. They think it's just curiosity. They don't realize curiosity is neutral. Direction is what defines it. Systems are still imperfect. Firewalls are still misconfigured. Trust is still fragile, and someone will always test it. The difference between a hacker and a defender isn't intelligence. It's where they decide to stand. You learn both sides. You carry both perspectives. And you know something most people don't. The internet isn't secure. It's negotiated every second between builders and breakers. And tomorrow, somewhere in the world, a blinking cursor will wait for someone to press enter and choose which side they're on.